Cyberpunk is making a revival. Many people are being introduced to the genre for the first time, and for those people, welcome to the raddest dystopia this side of Night City. But what even is cyberpunk? When did it start? Where is it heading? And what are the common themes underpinning all things cyberpunk?
Science fiction, double feature.
Science fiction has always been a reflection of the times we're living in. Whether it be the writers and painters of the 19th century taking their steam-powered boats and imagining worlds of floating fish cars by the year 2000, or the culture shock of the post-World War II technology boom, leading us to dream of building robots and flying to the stars. Cyberpunk, as we would recognize it from the world of Cyberpunk 2077, has its origins in the late 70s and early 80s as writers first began typing away at their Apple II computers and wondering what these things could be capable of in 50 years. While sci-fi has historically been very optimistic in its predictions of the future, the rising influence of government and corporations throughout the 70s and 80s, along with the emergence of the punk movement as a reaction to these fears, created the groundwork for a dystopia where any futuristic technologies that would be invented would be owned and controlled by the rich. In a future like this, the divide between rich and poor would become so great that the rich could then use technology to ensure that they stay the ruling class within society. This would create such an intense power divide to the point of corporations having more power than nations, and, as we see in the world of Cyberpunk 2077, corporations waging wars with each other to ensure their profits and power can be maintained. As this leather jacket suggests, this is where the punk comes into cyberpunk, as the construct of society is created for and used by the ruling class, while everyone else is forced to fight over the scraps. While cyberpunk may have its aesthetic on point and jamming tunes for days, no amount of hologrimes is going to make this world a good place to live. Alright, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, okay? Humanity, it's a cesspool. Now, I know this. I would like to hope that you know this too, because it's not a very well kept secret at this point. But what's news to me is that in the world of cyberpunk, we're not even really human anymore. A common theme throughout the cyberpunk genre is the relationship between man and machine. Cyberpunk often features cyborgs and robots living among flesh and blood people, and films such as Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell have asked the question of when does man stop and machine begin? We're getting a little jokery here, okay? If you can take a person and replace most of their body with cybernetic parts, are they still human? The character of Motoko Kusanagi, or Major from Ghost in the Shell, is emblematic of this very question. Major serves as field commander of a law enforcement office in Cyber Japan. Cyber Japan. Cyber Japan. Oh, pretty light. The colors. Look at the colors. And while she once was completely human, through time her body has become completely cybernetic.
Ooh, cyber titties. Cyber titties.
This begs the question, if she still has a human mind within a robot body, is she still human? What even is human when the line's so blurry?
自分が自分であるためには驚くほど多くのものが必要なのよ。他人を隔てるための顔、それと意識しない声、目覚めの時に見つめる手、幼かった頃の記憶、未来の予感。それだけじゃないわ。私の電脳がアクセスできる膨大な情報やネットの広がり。それらすべてが私の一部であり、私という意識そのものを生み出し。
Right, well, that existential crisis seems pretty cut and dry. But if we have a robot capable of all those things and more, does that mean they're really human? Cyberpunk has embedded within it this crippling identity crisis for humanity. When people can mold, model, and manufacture themselves at will, it seems like we have more control over what humanity can become. But in the process of doing that, we turn ourselves into something inhuman. If, in the world of cyberpunk, the poor are reduced to scavengers, and the wealthy have become truly inhuman, it's no wonder people just want to escape into their computers and become one with machine. A world that's this messed up has a silver lining. You can ascend into the internet. With the advancement of VR and AR technology, there now exists 2 dimensions that humans can inhabit. The VR dimension, with its endless swaths of VR chat waifus on the one hand, and the crippling mess of a society that we're trapped in on the other, henceforth referred to as the meat dimension.
You know, we're living in a society!
In Cyberpunk 2077 specifically, the AR world is referred to as net space. But this brings with it a very scary implication. Which is the real reality? At this point, the definition of what reality even means is subjective. People who jack into VR have a fundamentally different view of the cyberpunk world. To them, the meat dimension is this decaying carcass of humanity, and that our true future lies within the machine. That, with enough time, we may be able to leave behind our bioengineered cyborg bodies and exist purely as conscious manifestations of code. You know, I could get used to living inside of this screen. It's really not so bad once I get used to it. There's a little bit of a comfort living in 2 dimensions. There's not as much space to have to deal with. Is that the hidden utopia at the end of the cyberpunk timeline? Keanu Reeves just might have the answer. Keanu, get your ass over here. No, not that Keanu. Yes, you. Now take over the screen, you little shit. Few films have managed to bridge the gap between philosophy and boom boom explosion time quite so effortlessly as The Matrix. For the 5 people who haven't plugged themselves into Hollywood, The Matrix is about Thomas Anderson. By day, he has a steady job as a software engineer. By night, he goes by Neo as a computer hacker who slowly unravels a plot, revealing himself to be inside of a VR-like simulation his whole life. The Matrix as a whole represents the end state of the cyberpunk timeline, when the world is so irreparably damaged that humanity has ascended into VR as an escape. But this escape is just a new kind of prison. Just how the corporations and financial rulers of the old world constructed an economic and cultural system to keep us in place, the VR dimension is constructed in the exact same way as the meat dimension. Those same rulers also own and control our ability to live within the VR world. At this point, there's no difference between the dystopia of the VR world and the dystopia of the meat world. Aesthetically, they may be different, but the mechanisms of control exist in both realities. The genre of cyberpunk is a twisted nightmare of machine gods, feral savages, and everything in between. And while it may be fantasy today, we're quickly barreling towards this becoming a reality. Wow, you've made it through this whole shit show. Congratulations. Now, as you probably already know, these videos take a lot of time trapped in the editing chamber before they get farted out onto the internet. So any kind of like, subscribe, share, comment would be greatly appreciated in letting me know what y'all think about this content.